Hi everyone. So this is the third video, and this is just going to review the introduction portion of the essay format. Okay. So then, just first of all, as I mentioned earlier, I do want you to use these headings because if you don't, I'm going to automatically deduct points. Okay. And a few weeks ago, when I posted the handout onto Canvas, there's a document that's also included with the outline for the research proposal, and it's how I'm going to go about evaluating this final paper. All right. So make sure that you use that handout to make sure that you have all the points covered under each section of that handout. Okay. All right, and and then the next thing is that you notice, the text that's here and the Roman numerals and the letters. I'm going to make this very clear right now. I do not want to see any of the highlighted parts in the final draft. All right, because if I do, I'm going to deduct points. Okay, so I just want to make that very clear. Because those points are just there to help guide you to be able to write out the essay. All right. And just like what you did for me when you did the peer editing exercise and the reflection exercise, I would recommend that you do the introduction last and do everything else on the essay, like the issues, the purpose, the lit review, the significance, and the outcome. And then once you're done with that, then you could write the introduction as well as sorry about that the abstract. All right. So then you could write those two sections at the very end, or once you finish writing out the essay. Okay. Now, so I'm just gonna cover each point. So then what you're going to do is once you start writing the introduction, you're going to identify what your object of study is. And I'm going to give you the language of how you're going to start this. All right. And the first thing that you're going to write is the object of study for this research proposal will be society and blank. You are going to decide what the other half of that formulation is going to be. So it could be, for example, society and technology, or society and relationships, or society and racism, society and sexism, society and political violence. All right. So then what you're establishing with that first opening sentence is what you're sorry, is that you're establishing what we can call the general category of understanding. Okay. Because you're telling your reader with that first sentence what are the large picture, or the macro picture or image that you're going to deal with. All right. And then once you identify what the focal point is with society and filling in the blank, the next thing that you're going to do is describe how you imagine what your object of study looks like, right? And this is sort of referring back to Howard Becker that I had you read a while ago about how to develop an image. All right. So there's a reason why I assigned some of these readings, and it's to help you develop the skills necessary to be able to successfully complete an essay. All right. And making sure that you develop your points to the fullest or the to its logical conclusion. Right. And when I show you the example, I will indicate what part of the paragraph relates to what part of the points on this handout. Okay. So then there's going to be no excuse to not be able to format the paper the way it's supposed to be formatted. Going back to the handout on how I'm going to evaluate, um, it's important to format papers properly. and it goes back to what I suggested towards the beginning of the semester, is the aesthetics or the appearance of the manuscript itself also lends itself to encourage the reader to read the essay or the manuscript because of the way that it looks and how it appears and so on. So it has to look nice and neat and well organized. So there should be no gaps. So sorry, there should be no there should not be any unnecessary gaps between the sentences and the paragraphs and the sections. Okay. So you want to make sure that everything looks tight and well, neat and well organized. Okay. But then I also included not only I wrote, this refers to Howard Becker's imagery, but I also wrote refer to the news story if you haven't decided on how you conduct the imagery for your object of study. I recommend that you refer to a newspaper like the LA New York Times, the LA Times, and the Christian Science Monitor is another newspaper that not too many people are aware of, but it's a good newspaper to look for inspiration for wording your object of study's imagery. Right, because if you recall, I sort of explained along with Howard Becker is the better that you're able to provide a clear description and explanation of your topic, then it helps to reduce any misunderstandings or any misgivings that could potentially happen by not providing a full description of what you're looking at. Right. So like that's the intent. Um as to why I had you read Becker's piece. Okay. So then once you have provided a description of the image of your topic or your object of study, then you're going to explain to your reader how and why you selected your particular topic. And this could be something personal, right? If the topic that you selected is relating to an experience that you had. Recall, I had you do an example of how to use personal experience as a research project, maybe sometime somewhere at the beginning or the middle of the semester. Right. When I had you think about how to identify topics for potential research when you're reading a newspaper. Right. So I gave examples of how to use the newspaper to develop a topic, right, or a research project, and I also provided a written description of how you are able to use your personal experiences to be able to develop a research project. Okay. Just to sort of give you an example, so when I did my dissertation, right, as a student at UC or graduate student at UCSB, I did it again when I mentioned throughout the semester. The book that I'm editing now is the study on Panorama City, which I call Barrioology, a spatial history of Panorama City. One of the things that I wrote in that book was to explain what inspired me to do a study on Panorama City. And it was because one, I've been living in Panorama City since 1971. Yeah, I think I was like 2 or 3 years old when my mom moved our family from living in the projects in downtown LA to the San Fernando Valley. Okay. And then I also wrote and explained that my identity as a working class Chicano comes from my experiences growing up in Panorama City because Panorama City is a working class Latino immigrant community, right? And it also has, or yeah, it still has one of the worst gangs. Well, at least one of the worst gangs when I was growing up, which was called Bly Street, and that's the street that I got jumped into my first week or day of junior high, right? So my identity is attached to Panorama City, right? Um, And I sort of explained that as well. And then I also included the passing of my mother and how that impacted me and how I sort of saw Panorama City as well. Right now, you don't have to be that personal in terms of being able to explain how you selected your topic. You could say something along the lines of, yeah, that you heard of that particular topic and that you were always curious about it, and now is an opportunity to be able to look at that particular object of study or topic as a sociologist would. And right, and that's legitimate explanation or reason to do a study. Oh, excuse me. And again, when I show you the written example, excuse me, I'll show you that in the paragraph as well. And then once you're done explaining why you selected or how you selected or came about your topic, then you're going to go to Roman numeral number 4, and you're going to explain to your reader why reading your research is essential. Provide a reason why a person should consider reading your manuscript. So this is just where I sort of made this point not too long ago when I talked about the social contract. This point is establishing a social contract between you as the writer and me or another person as the reader. Because you're telling them, one, if you do decide to read this manuscript, it's not going to be a waste of your time. All right, because people have limited time and they need to make a decision as to what and how and the things that they're going to read or consume in terms of the reading. So then you have to make a compelling argument to convince the reader that, yes, by selecting this particular manuscript and making the decision to read it, that they're going to get something out of it in terms of why it's important to read your study, right? Because Roman numeral point number 5 is also closely related, but it offers nuance. All right, and what I mean by nuance is that you're able to provide a description and explanation, and to be able to make these clear distinctions, even though that they're also related. Like points 4 and 5 inform your reader not only about what benefit they're going to get, but also what insights. All right, and that's point number 5, because you're going to explain to your reader what insights they can gain by reading your manuscript. All right, and that's basically um, not only what they're going to learn, but how they're going to hopefully change their perspective or convince your reader to sort of accept your thesis about your particular topic. Right? Because when I do the example essay, I picked the topic that looks at society and crime, and how crime or the understanding and fear of crime has been used to tailor social policies to be able to regulate not only criminal or delinquent behavior, but non-criminal and non-delinquent behavior. Right. And as a consequence, it has sort of led to what we call today mass incarceration, where the United States has the world's largest prison population, even though that it claims that it's a democracy, and how many 100 per thousand people are ending in prisons in certain countries. So I do have like a table to sort of make a comparison to show the extensiveness and the magnitude of how the prison system is integrated into society. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And then now that's okay. So that's for what insights that they're going to get. And then the last point, Roman numeral number 6, is this one right here. And what you're going to do here is like you're going to explain to your reader your position towards the existing literature you collected. Sorry about that. And then what you're going to do is that you're going to select one of these three points I have in this parenthetical comment, and I'm going to explain each point, right? So, for example, you could write one or two sentences and explain how your research aligns with the existing literature. What this basically means is that your research agrees with the overall findings of what other research about your particular topic has been consistently found among other researchers. Okay. And there's nothing wrong to say that your research aligns with the existing literature. It just means that you structured your study well, you collected the proper data, right? And you asked the right questions and you framed it in such a way that it makes sense when you compare what you wrote to what other people wrote about the same topic. So that's what that means. Okay. And then for if you decide to say or refer to point number two, this is what that means. So you're saying that your research contradicts the existing literature. So then what you're saying is that based on your understanding on the existing literature, you found certain contradictions or certain points of analysis that don't necessarily make sense if and when you introduce new or unused empirical evidence. And at least for my face-to-face classes, I sort of made this point to you when I shared with you when I was an undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara. I took a delinquency course. And I was pretty much the only minority in that class where everyone else was white. The professor was white, the students were white, and I was the only Chicano or person of color in that class. And one of the things that sort of rubbed me the wrong way was that how the professor and the type of readings that he used in that course depicted Black and Chicano gangs. And because I came from a gang background, it dawned on me that when the professor spoke about gangs in the hood or in el barrio, he was literally, and the students were literally understanding the existence and experiences of myself, my family in the barrio, and my friends. Right. And then that's when I developed a critical perspective on my education, realizing that the educational structure itself is not necessarily going to give me the education that I want. So I needed to learn how to take my education for me and not have some person outside of me or the professor give me what they think I should know. Right. I would consider that because that is important. Right. But then I had to be able to recognize on how do I want to use that information to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. All right. And this is where I realized that I needed to take control of my own education. Okay. Yeah, so like that's pretty much how I develop my critical perspective. All right. You're not I'm not expecting anyone to sort of fall in line with that type of experience, all right? But I just want to make sure that you understand if you select this one, I expect to see what things you're contradicting and how you're contradicting it and how you are supporting your claims in establishing that contradiction with the existing literature. Okay. Now, or if you selected number three, and number three says your research offers something different from the existing literature. So then this assumes that you have a very good grasp and the very strong command of the debates and arguments about your particular topic. And then as you did your research, you noticed that some information or a type of approach or a type of evidence has not been used, right? And this is sort of what I set out for my book on the Bioology, the Spatial History of Panorama City, because what I noticed as a student is that I noticed that sociology does not treat, and what I mean by treat is that sociology does not consider the aspect of social space in relationship to human interactions in society. So then I wanted to show in my book how social space is an important element in social interactions, but I did not want to over determine social space as the dominating factor in how people interact. Right. It was more of showing the how these social spaces or the milieu does contribute to the type of conversations and interactions that people have. Meaning that you wouldn't necessarily treat a professor in the context of a university campus as you would treat your parents or your grandparents or some other older member of your family, and vice versa. Because the social space dictates the type of behavior that you engage in, as well as what is the social role that the person is occupying. And I sort of you do talk about that, or I do talk about that in my book as well. But that's not neither here nor there. Okay. But the point for this is that if you do say that you're offering something different, you need to show that in the literature review. Okay, because that's also a promise that you're making to your reader that they're going to understand how your particular study relates to the existing literature. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by that, go back to Booth et al. And review the section about having conversations with your text. Right. And I can't remember exactly the page number, but that's sort of where that comes from. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, and then the next video is going to review the issue section.